Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pick a Side podcast. My name is Joel Moran and I'm here with Jack, Barteck, and Riv. This is now episode number 40. Closing in on 50 episodes now. Feels like this time went by. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Colts and Titans game, recapping that game, creating a hypothetical debate of who's going to win or lose first, the Steelers or the Jets. Then we're going to react to Lamar Jackson saying the defenses know their plays. And then we're going to briefly talk about the mess that is the Houston Texans and what their future looks like. Then we're going to move on to the NBA and we're going to talk about the Texans' counterpart, the Houston Rockets, and all the drama that's been circulating around them, the latest NBA rumors, and then that's how we're going to finish off the show. So how you guys been today?
I'm all right.
I'm just thinking it must be crazy to be a Houston fan. And you went from like 2 years ago having the Texans, Astros, Rockets, who all seemed like contenders, like great teams. And now you're looking at
the Astros.
The cheating Astros.
Whoa. They didn't cheat this year,
cheated.
though. But they didn't cheat
no,
this year,
No,
though.
But they have that cheating scandal on their back. The Rockets, we know what's going on there. We'll talk about it. And the Texans, which they're not the Jets, but they're
Imagine
close.
being a New York fan.
So I told you guys about a story
Yeah.
I had to tell on the beginning of the episode. So today I almost got scammed for $1,000.
Elaborate.
Yeah, so literally I'm in class, right? And I look at my phone and then a Wells Fargo notification comes up because I have Wells Fargo as my bank. And it's like somebody tried to use your card in a Walmart in Arkansas and pay for something that costs $1,000.
Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas.
He said Arkansas, didn't he?
Arkansas. But thank God it got declined because I don't even got $1,000 in my bank account. So then I got a notification like a minute later that somebody tried to make a transaction for $600. And I was like, oh, they're going lower and lower. And I was
trying to find out how much
yeah. So I just turned off my debit card right there. I had to call Wells Fargo, and now they're sending me a brand new card.
Damn.
What?
You have any idea
That's
how
crazy.
you ended up in Arkansas?
No, I don't know how because I have my card with me. Like the physical like it's not lost. It's not stolen. Somebody just probably
Those
looked
hackers,
up
man.
Yeah, somebody just looked up my information and then that's it.
Somebody bought an $80 Uber on my account in L.A.
How's that even possible?
I don't know. He just used it. I was just like, I'm at home. And he's just like, I just get a notification like your Lyft driver will be on his way. So I'm like, I'm fresh. I'm like waking up. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm, washing my face to figure out what's going on. I look at my phone and the dude is like, we'll be there in 45 minutes. And I'm like, wait, what the hell? Who's in the car? And this like $85. I'm like, wow, LA, that's crazy to me.
And you didn't do anything about it? You just let this guy get the
I
ride?
I had to hit up Lyft, and I'm like, yo, that's not me. Like, I'm not in LA. That's not me. They're like, all right, we're going to send you your money back, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but wait, who has my account? Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, it's over for Lyft.
Yeah, man, it's weird, bro. Especially in this digital age, it's so easy for people to look up your information. Like, it's crazy. I was talking to my dad about it earlier. I was like, man, I feel so naked right now. I want to switch bank accounts.
Yeah.
Wells Fargo is kind of bad. I used to have
They have a reputation for these like security breaches, and my dad was like, honestly, it's not even gonna matter. Like every single bank, there's gonna be a risk like that.
But Wells Fargo is by far the worst.
Yeah, I've been.
That and BOA.
It's so convenient. Like Wells Fargo is around the block from my house.
Yeah.
I remember last year, this past summer actually, I was actually on a billboard for Montclair State.
Yeah.
This past summer, and so they posted a picture of it, and it had like my name in the caption, whatever, like Jack Barteck, sophomore at Montclair State, whatever. And then that summer, like in August, I get an email one day. I'm on the beach with my family. I get an email from like the dean of students, and it's like, we looked into your claim and like we didn't find any problems with your claim to student safety or whatever. And I was like, what is this? And I look at the email, and it's like this email from barteckjack@gmail.com, which I have never owned that email address. It was never me.
Barteck Jack.
And,
you could really fool
and
somebody
this
like
person literally wrote this whole email with like mad spelling mistakes and everything, and screenshots of a girl's Instagram page where she was like smoking and everything like that. And she was like this person is coming to school in Montclair next year. I think they're a risk to like the school's image or whatever. And I emailed the guy back and I was like, I didn't like, that's nice. I didn't send any of that. And so I had to like file a claim with like the Montclair State Police about like a stolen identity. Cause these people literally like I'm assuming they found my name on the Instagram and like just made an email and they rerouted it to me. Like, how is that like,
yeah,
I get it, but at the same time, it's like nobody vetted that it was. They just assumed. So what if somebody was like made the email Barteck Jack and said like, I'm gonna run around robbing people on Monday.
What if it went viral on Twitter?
Yeah,
like stuff like that happens.
Yo, side note. I see you have bananas over there. I would like one when the show's over. Just wanted to throw that out there. I was looking at them for a really long time, and I would like one of those.
So you want to be the Glizzy Gladiator? Nah, you can get a banana.
Thanks,
it's fine.
I appreciate that.
So before we do the first topic, I just see.
Before we do, because now that we're on just calm and collective talks, I have this thing on my phone that's been like, I don't know what happened to my phone one day, but it's just like, I get this thing on my calendar that pops up like every day, and it's like, click now to protect your priceless data every time, or like Maria wants to send you a video at 3:24, and it's like every day. Do you like know how to stop that?
I don't know what
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like,
I don't know what
it's like,
that is.
It's mad weird. I just
that might be a when you're eating your banana, you could explain to us.
Yeah, because it's like weird. It's like I don't know what happened to my phone. Because you remember my phone was tripping the other day?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like something on my phone just has this thing pop up every day on my calendar.
Well, I'm glad you at least got it to work again.
Yeah, I had to wait for it to die.
So before we start the show, can you just do me a favor, Jack, and see if the camera's recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know.
You're ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I would hope it is.
I'm pretty sure it is, but I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, it says REC. Yeah, okay.
Look, bro, look at all this nonsense.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell is that.
Riv is getting hacked.
Literally. Bro, look.
That is not normal at all.
This is literally every day.
Let me see.
We're going to have to put like something in the description like skip to timestamp if you don't want to hear our nonsense.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
That is-
bro.
We're going to have to
We're
talk
at
about
7
that.
minutes right now.
New message from Lexi. Who's Lexi?
That
weird.
is a virus is what that is.
Yeah, that's crazy, bro. Did you jailbreak your phone?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
You need to run some malware or something.
I'll get a new phone. That's all right. Start the show, man. Pissed off.
Okay, so the first topic we're going to talk about is the Colts and Titans. They played on Thursday. We know the Colts won pretty handily, 34-17. In my opinion, oh my God, this game, it was closer than it looked because I think special teams kind of set this game apart. A blocked punt, a TJ Carey taking it for the touchdown, and that was horrible special teams play by the Titans. They could not block their punter. I think the punter's name was Trevor Daniel.
Wasn't his first game too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
he got picked off for practice squad.
He just got picked off from from FedEx. He was driving a FedEx
Wait, what?
truck. Yeah,
I didn't know that part.
He was driving a FedEx truck when the Titans general manager called them to come and play.
Damn.
And their kicker before that, Ryan Allen, he played in Week 9. He averaged 50 yards a punt. So people are questioning the decision for them to start this guy Trevor Daniel because Ryan Allen was available to play.
On top of the block, he also shanked the punt really bad. Like the block wasn't really his fault. The shank was bad.
The shank was
and that was on
bad.
him. And they also beyond Trevor Daniel, Steven Gostkowski missed another kick.
Been inconsistent all year.
I don't know. They got problems there with that special teams. As special teams, like a lot of people forget about it, but it'll separate a team from being good or great.
It's important. I want to know your take because, you like to bash the Colts. You like to up the Titans a lot. You said, "Oh, Titans, easy." We did the pick'ems.
We took the Colts.
Yeah, I took
when I was just watching this game, like the first half I was cool and I was like, all right, this looks like it's gonna be a dog fight. But then in the second half, I felt like because throughout the game, I just feel like the Titans couldn't really get it going. Like I feel like they had a couple plays here and there, but I feel like they just couldn't really get a consistent, repeated drive going down. And then in the second half, the Colts defense just became suffocating and just stopped them. And at that point, I felt like it was over from that moment.
This was the lowest amount of points that the Titans scored since Week 1 versus Denver when they scored 16. They scored 17 in Indianapolis. Ryan Tannehill had 54 yards in the first half. He had 53 in the second half. Matt Eberflus, I was talking about on last episode, and I think that I mispronounced his name. It's like Eberflus. It's around there or whatever. I'll pronounce it better next time. But he's been a great defensive coach. Their defense is super disciplined. Since he's got there, when he first got there, they had the 30th ranked defense. Since he's got there, they've had the 10th ranked defense. Last year, they had the 18th ranked defense, and now they have the 3rd ranked defense. So he's improved that group immensely.
Yeah, and they kept Derrick Henry in check, who we failed to mention last week in the best running back in the league conversation. He's definitely up there.
I don't know how we forgot.
But
you picked Camaro.
He's definitely one of the top running backs in the league, and he got pretty much shut down last night. And on the other side of the ball, the Colts got 430 yards of offense. They shredded the Colts secondary. They shredded the Titans secondary, which, I mean, I guess you could say maybe Desmond King is getting adjusted, whatever, but at some point the excuses got to stop.
I wouldn't even put it all on Desmond King. I'll put it all on whoever was guarding Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know him before this game. He came out the way. He was dominant last game. And
I knew him. Sorry to cut you off, but I knew him before this game, and I was waiting on this breakout game
He's
from
been
Pittman.
dealing with injuries.
Exactly. He's been injured for the year. Last year, he had a breakout game for him. He had 54 yards against the Ravens. I had a feeling he was going to have it this game, and he had 100 yards. He had one rush that went for 21 yards. I'm not even sure if it's about who's guarding Michael Pittman, because just from what I was seeing, I think there was a lot of zone that Titans were playing, because there was this one route that Pittman got open on, and it was because Rivers was reading like the safety to see if the corner route was going to be open. So I think that was zone. In my opinion, they played more zone than man.
Yeah, and their coverage was way too weak. Phillip Rivers is not a guy at this point in his career that is really going to beat you over the top. Maybe in his Chargers days, but not anymore. And they were just playing way too far off, way too soft coverage in that zone, and they were just picking them apart. And it just can't happen. At some point in the game, you need to adjust, and it's almost like the opposite happened, where they were solid in the first half, and then the Colts come out and win the second half 21-0.
Special teams in the second half kind of like was like, damn, that was kind of like the killer for them. The momentum was down. And, the Colts defense was just suffocating them. And I knew eventually, like, in the first half, it looked like they was going to get it going, but you could tell, like, throughout the game, the Colts defense was eventually going to wear them out. It was only a moment. It was only a time where it was going to be where we was going to see the Titans couldn't score, and then we saw it in the second half. They came out, and that defense was just suffocating, and the Titans couldn't get nothing going.
They shut them down. Jonnu Smith had 2 receptions. I think A.J. Brown had 1.
He dropped that.
Yeah,
he had a catch he should have caught.
And I was just going to mention that they had a couple of plays in the ball game that you go back and look and say, man, they really should have won this football game. And the first one that stuck out to me was that A.J. Brown drop. It was first quarter, and they had a chance to pile on the Colts. And A.J. Brown would have had probably a 70-yard walk-in touchdown, and he just couldn't haul it in. And it seemed like that was emblematic of their entire night, the special teams plays that we talked about. There was a couple other plays that you look at, and you're just like, great teams make those plays.
I was looking at the box score for Phillip Rivers. He had 300 yards, a touchdown. He had a clean game, but in all honesty, he missed 2 opportunities in the goal line, one to Hines on an out route and another one to Mo Alley Cox on an out route too. And I think he hesitated on it because, in my opinion, out routes are one of the hardest routes and the trickiest routes in the NFL to throw.
You have to time it.
Yeah, because if the timing is off,
it's over.
It's a pick six. That they're so risky. So he could have thrown it to Mo Alley Cox. They got a touchdown on that drive anyway, but because Jacoby Brissett QB sneaked it. I know there's like this thing going around that Phillip Rivers doesn't like QB sneaking.
I wouldn't either.
Like, he doesn't like QB sneaking, which is why they put Brissett in there.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like Phillip Rivers, for the most part in the game, he was composed. He controlled the game. He was a game manager. This one, he saw the tempo. I like the no huddle they was playing for a little bit. Nyheim Hines was playing
He played
well.
awesome.
He played well. So This was a good Colts win. This was a good Colts win.
And I told you guys, Nyheim Hines was the best running back on that Colts team.
I didn't disagree with you.
He was I've seen it throughout this whole year. Look, I like Jonathan Taylor coming out of college. I got deceived by his college production. But most running backs that have these great college illustrious careers, they don't really pan out in the NFL, especially in Wisconsin. One guy that comes to mind is Monty Ball. Or Monte Ball.
God.
He was a beast in college.
Wow.
Alvin Kamara didn't have 1 year in college where he ran for 1,000 yards. Jonathan Taylor was historic in college. Sometimes it just doesn't pan out in the NFL. To me, he just doesn't have a burst. Like, look, this is his snap count percentage the past 4 weeks. Week 6, he took 59% of the snaps. Week 8, he took 34% of the snaps. Week 9, he took 31% of the snaps. And week 10, last game yesterday, he took 25% of the snaps.
Yeah, and he's also dealing with some confidence issues. They mentioned it last week when they got him the early touchdown at the goal line. I forget who was on the call for that game, but whoever it was mentioned he's been having confidence struggles, and it's nice to get him going with the touchdown at the goal line, and he didn't do anything from there. And when you're a rookie and things aren't going your way, sometimes you get caught in a hole, and I feel like he's gotten himself caught in that hole and has not found his way out.
Not to mention, Nyheim Hines is only going to keep playing better. So with that being said, and when Marlon Mack comes back next season or whenever he comes back, Taylor's going to get dropped further down the depth chart. So he has to get that confidence back in order for him to play.
And to your point, one more thing I wanted to add to the point you made about Phillip Rivers, taking him out on the QB sneak. They also, if you remember, took him out for the Hail Mary attempt last week.
Yeah.
I forget if it was at halftime.
It was before the half.
And they took him out and put in Jacoby Brissett. So I think in a way they're trying to protect Phillip Rivers in his older age.
Yeah, not only that, but I think, and in that play specifically, the QB sneak, they don't want Phillip to get hurt. Yeah. I don't think he wants to, but the Hail Mary, it's just that Phillip Rivers can't throw that far.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So they put Brissett in there. But honestly, the Colts' offense isn't good. The reason they're not good, if they had a better offense, they'd be one of the top 3 teams in the AFC.
Because their defense is one of the better defenses in the league.
Like, look at this disparity between these teams. The Colts had more time of possession, but they also had more penalties. They had 9 penalties for 73 yards. The Titans had 3 penalties for 30 yards. So I think this game was really decided by special teams. That touchdown that they got from the block punt, that was 7 points. The botched punt, that led to 7 points. That's 14 points right there.
The field goal. And all those things, special teams, beyond the numbers of what it's giving you, momentum-wise, you can't even scale out how much of a difference it is starting out at the 50-yard line as opposed to the 20-yard line or something like that. So, I think the momentum plays so much more. You have a nice possession, and Gostkowski misses the field goal, and it's like all of that work was for nothing. It's demoralizing when your special teams doesn't play well, and it killed them last night.
I mean, I know me. I have the Colts winning this division. I don't know if you still are picking the Titans.
I'm still raw with the Titans.
I have the Colts winning this division. I think it's going to be really close.
I'm raw with the Titans. I think this game was more about the Titans beating themselves than the Colts beating them. So
no, I think this was about the Colts beating them. Their defense figured them out. I think that's beating them.
They was up 17-13. Even with a few mistakes they made, they could have piled on the lead in the first half. They didn't make those mistakes. Second half was a lot of special team errors. You could go either way with it, but I'm a ride with the Titans. I think that game, like we was talking about before, that last game they play is going to be really the decider.
I'm also going to ride with the Titans. I just think that they have a more talented group, and I think that Mike Vrabel will get them back on track. I think the Colts can win it, but I feel like if the Colts win the division, it will be more the Titans losing the division than the Colts winning it, as cliche as that sounds.
They face again in 2 weeks.
Boom.
The Titans need that one.
So we're going to go on to our next question. It's a hypothetical. The Jets are winless at 0-9. They have a bye week, so maybe, I don't know, they have a bye week, so they have a chance to maybe recoup and get ready for next game against the Chargers.
Recoup?
Yes.
Recoup what?
Recoup the confidence. I don't know. It's a bye week. Bye weeks are always helpful. And then, or are the Steelers going to lose first? So the Steelers' schedule, they're facing the Bengals, then the Jaguars, then the Ravens, then Washington, then the Bills, then the Bengals, then the Colts, and the Browns. Big Ben is expected to play against the Bengals this Sunday. Just want to let you guys know. The Jets' schedule is the Chargers, the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Seahawks, the Rams, the Browns, and the Patriots.
Maybe a win.
I
have Steelers losing to Baltimore round 2. So that's what I think. I don't think you guys get a win until week 17.
And that's what I'm gonna say is it. Like I almost was annoyed researching this topic because I can't see the Jets getting a win except maybe the Patriots week 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, you talk about the Steelers have one of the easiest schedules in the league moving forward. So based on strength of schedule, and even still, like.
I don't think the Steelers lose to a bad team or a team that's just not as good as them all year.
Like, you look at the Jets, they're bottom 10 in almost every single team statistical category. The offense is dead last in points, yards, pass yards per attempt, first downs, third down percentage, and they have one of the toughest schedules in the league moving.
I feel like that happens to every year.
So, like, I just don't see where they're going to turn around. They've looked a smidge better with Dowell Loggins calling the plays, but it's still not good. The play calling is still not good, and 2,
what?
He just passed Joe Montana.
Who cares?
Joe Flacco.
He looked good against the Patriots, who are
still lost.
They're in a funk of their own, and they still lost the game. They just find ways to lose games.
Call me crazy, but I think the Jets can beat the Chargers or Raiders.
I definitely don't think the Raiders.
I don't think the Jets will beat the Chargers. I think the Chargers will beat themselves.
Exactly.
That's still a win for the Jets.
No, it'll be a win, but I don't think we're going to sit there and say, well, the Jets completely went to this game and dominated.
This is my take. I think we have a chance of winning before the Steelers, because I'm a Jets fan. That's why I say we.
Yeah.
If Joe Flacco plays instead of Darnold.
Ooh.
Joe Flacco's a better quarterback than Sam Darnold.
Oh.
At this current point in time.
Yes. Joe Flacco, he has an 80 QB rating, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Darnold, a 66 QB rating, 3 touchdowns, 6 picks.
Yeah.
Like, Joe Flacco's been better. When you see him, when you see Flacco instead of Darnold, you notice it too. He's been better.
Darnold needs to go somewhere and grow, and he is not doing that at all in New York. And so you can't necessarily blame him for it.
I think they're both winnable games. I think Dolphins isn't. Seahawks maybe.
I don't think
Seahawks no.
I don't think the Raiders are a winnable game. I think that the Chargers.
They have the 20th ranked defense.
I think yes.
What do you guys have?
One of the worst defenses.
But I'm just saying.
And they actually have a competent offense that's been looking really good. The Chiefs have hung with great teams all year long. They beat the Chiefs. They've played with a bunch of good
like
teams.
There's a chance.
Who did they play?
They just beat somebody. Like, literally just beat somebody.
I mean, last year we thought the Jets weren't going to beat the Raiders, and we blew them out. I know you remember
last year was a totally different team.
I know you remember.
I think you guys were way better last year than you were this year, though.
110%.
Not according to Jack, though.
Oh, man.
He said no. When we had Jamal, Robbie, and Le'Veon, you were like,
I never said we weren't better. I just said that we were not going to be a contender.
No, he just thought you guys weren't good, though.
No. It wasn't that I didn't think that we were good. I didn't think that we were good enough to contend. We could have put together a team that would have won 9 games, and we would have had a nice placebo playoff spot to go and get blown out by 30 points in the first round and
I'd rather
no
be that.
ground.
I'd rather
be that. I would not
yeah.
rather that.
I'd rather be in the playoffs.
Because you're going nowhere from that.
What do you mean? The Dolphins might do that this year.
Literally.
If they secure a playoff spot. Or the Browns.
And what was the discussion we were having about the Dolphins last year? At the start of the season last year, what was the discussion? Is Clemson going to beat the Dolphins? Ridiculous.
He has a point.
But that's where the Dolphins were at. Where were the Jets at the start of the season? Can Clemson beat the Jets?
No, but Clemson can really
Sometimes you have to go backwards before you can go forwards. The key is when you go forward, you have to take the right steps.
I do think that Dolphins narrative was overblown.
Oh, I agree.
Because it was only the first half of the year. Brian Flores made a run at the end.
Yes.
It was still a narrative,
it's
though,
because
nonetheless.
they brought in Brian Flores, which was a great decision at head coach, which the Jets need to hit on. If they bring in the right head coach and they can get Trevor Lawrence and surround him with some weapons, I think that they will
Sounds
be
to me
in
like
fine
you guys
shape
are
moving
banking
forward.
your whole life on Trevor Lawrence.
No, we're banking our whole life on Joe Douglas, which I know he hates, but it's what you have to do.
He despises him.
So I'm guessing you guys think that the Jets go winless and the Steelers.
I think Steelers lose before Jets win.
I think the Steelers lose before the Jets win. The only chance that the opposite result has.
I don't see us scoring against Miami.
The Chargers have to beat themselves next week. I believe they play next week, right? This is the Jets bye. They play next week. The only way they win a game before week 17, I don't think the Steelers go undefeated. So they'll have a loss before week 17.
I think they'll lose to Baltimore, the Bills. They might lose a stinker to the Colts.
I'll be honest. I hope the Jets go winless. I
agree.
I want them to get Trevor Lawrence and to secure Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, that would be
Not
that.
a nail biter.
Because if they win a game, then you're hand in hand with the Jaguars, and I don't know if I see them winning a game.
Yeah,
and
you go
based on
0-16,
strength of schedule, they would have the first pick.
You don't win a game, you secure Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
He's there. He's going to New York.
And honestly, like, you watched the game against the Patriots on Monday, and I don't know if you saw it because you guys were arguing, and I was low-key watching the game. They had the ball with 6 minutes left, a 10-point lead.
Oh, yeah, lost, right?
And they the ball on the 20-yard line, and they aired out a 60-yard pass into double coverage, which, I mean, there is almost no explanation other than you wanted to lose the game.
That's why Joe Flacco's the best.
Like, I don't know what else the explanation could be. So I have to start questioning, are the Jets actively tanking?
We just have to hope that as Jets fans, Joe Flacco nor Sam Darnold have a all-time great quarterback display to end off the season.
I mean, wouldn't it be good for Darnold because then it ups his trade value?
I don't think it matters at this point.
Yeah. That's the thing about the Chargers game is their defense has been so bad that we could kind of hang around with them. But if Justin Herbert looks as good as he's looked, he will put up a career day against the Jets. It will be ugly, and there's no chance. And then until week 17, you don't play an opponent that you should even be close to.
Oh, yeah.
You could argue the Raiders, but the Raiders have impressed me against good teams. You know, they beat the Chargers in that nail biter. They beat the Chiefs. They played really well against the Bills. They beat the Saints earlier in the season. They beat the Panthers, who were an up and down
After the Raiders,
team.
you got Seattle and Rams, who might put up record days on you guys.
Yeah, I don't feel confident in the Jets getting a win, so I'm going to say the Steelers lose first.
Losers.
The next topic we're going to talk about is Lamar Jackson. Recently, he talked to Rich Eisen, I believe. It was Rich Eisen, and he said that defenses are calling out their plays and stuff like that, and they've been knowing what they're doing on offense. And I just want to know your thoughts on that. And what do you feel like is in the future for the Ravens now that defenses are kind of figuring their offense out?
Well, the one thing that really caught my eye looking into this topic was Greg Roman, who we talked about. He said this is nothing new. It's happened to his offenses before. It doesn't concern him, and that's fine. What really concerned me about what Greg Roman said is he said some quarterbacks audible or have the freedom to audible every play. Sometimes that works out well for them. Sometimes it doesn't. Some people don't do it at all. I would say we're somewhere in between there. And to me, that just does not at all, exude any confidence in Lamar Jackson in that statement. And maybe I'm looking too far into it. In terms of reading
pre-snap reads and stuff, yeah.
Maybe I'm reading too far into that, but to me, that is almost saying, like, we don't have confidence in Lamar Jackson to control the offense.
But you think about it, Lamar Jackson basically saying that defenses know our stuff is kind of taking a shot at Greg Roman.
You could say that. I mean, the thing is, like, we talked about this in the last season MVP conversation when we talked. I think that was 2 episodes ago when we were talking about if Lamar Jackson deserved the MVP in 2018.
He didn't.
Yeah, we had that argument. And, I mentioned how Lamar Jackson adds a new element to that Greg Roman offense. But as much as it does that, it can kind of become predictable if they keep running it because the offense is a lot of RPO, a lot of designed quarterback runs, and it's predicated on the quarterback being able to run, which I think after a season and a half becomes fairly predictable.
I just want to read a quote from the Steelers game, from the linebacker Highsmith. I knew when that play started, they were coming back to that because they ran the same play in the first half, and I didn't drop deep enough. So I learned from that play, it just dropped deeper. The ball just fell into my hands.
That's bad.
From what I got from this, it's just the offense has become predictable. And I think from what you said, Greg Roman, after saying what he said, I think this is more showing us the limitations of Lamar Jackson's game and the fact that the offense has been predictable because he has limitations in passing the ball and being a pocket passer. And I think the limitations are affecting their playbook because he hasn't gotten better. So the playbook can't get better with him and his limitations. That's what I took from this.
This is one of the rare instances that I'm gonna take both sides here. One, from this quote, I could see that there's kind of division between Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson kind of took a shot at Greg Roman by saying, people know our stuff, it's simplistic. And Greg Roman took a shot by saying, well, yeah, you're supposed to audible if you see it's not there. You're supposed to make those type of decisions. That's your job as a quarterback. So obviously there's some division there. But I want to defend Lamar Jackson. I think he has gotten better, but the wide receivers, he doesn't have a good receiving core. I'll be honest. Yeah. He doesn't have a good receiving core to even show that he can be that good of a passer and show off his arm because these receivers aren't that great. I mean, it's Hollywood Brown's their best receiver. Willie Snead's their second best, and I think they're like neck and neck in terms of how good they are. And there's this good quote that Brett Coleman tweeted. I don't know if you guys ever heard about him. He does film analysis on YouTube. But he tweeted Bruce Lee's quote, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." And that's the Ravens offense. Yes, it's predictable, but they've mastered that.
Yeah.
At some point, it just comes down to execution.
Yeah, and as much as we talk about it being predictable and stuff like that, they still have the best rushing offense in the league. And Bill Belichick even... I wish that I had written it down, but he had some quotes talking about the Ravens offense. Like, they're still an elite offense, and Lamar Jackson is still incredibly difficult to stop. And he said specifically, this isn't an exact quote, but it's very similar to what he said. Even if they might not be ending in touchdowns, you go back and you watch their last 3 games. You watch the game against Pittsburgh. He's ripping off 20-yard runs almost every possession. That is incredibly hard to stop. And you look at his passing numbers, he had a ridiculous season last year statistically. So we look at his numbers this year, 1,500 passing yards, 12 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 63% completion rate, and 469 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And we look at that as a down year, but realistically, those numbers are not that bad. It's just that the bar is set so high for him. So if your offense being predictable is 6-2 and those numbers out of your quarterback, it's pretty darn good.
But but I think because at some point you got to look at it, and if you're gonna have to get past the Steelers eventually, you're gonna have to get past the Chiefs eventually. I don't think with this repetitive offense you're gonna be able to do that.
Well, you have to execute, but back to your point, I mean, yeah, but when the bar is that high, you have to reach that bar. You have to consistently perform at that bar for people to continue to respect you the way they once respected you. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, last year he had 24 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That was a down year. People said he was washed. This is a guy who threw 2 interceptions in 16 games. That's a career year for some guys, but that's the bar for Aaron Rodgers. And Lamar winning the MVP in his second year, that's where the bar is for him now. The Ravens are still averaging 170 yards rushing. Yeah. They're still putting up 28 points per game. They're still scoring. They still have one of the better offenses in the NFL. So at some point, I think it comes down to execution when they play those better teams.
Yeah, and we also got to take into consideration they've had injuries on that line, and like you mentioned, they also have been missing Mark Ingram. They don't have the receivers.
Marshall Yonder retired.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question almost. Do we think that 23-year-old Lamar Jackson has no room for growth as a quarterback? Because that's what it seems. And I get it. We are holding him to this standard coming off an MVP season. But when I see people talking about Kyler Murray versus Lamar Jackson. Who would you rather have for the future? And people are saying Kyler Murray, and it's not even close. I ask where that comes from because they're both 23 years old, and we saw Lamar Jackson have a season last year that Kyler hasn't even touched. So where is the basis behind people saying stuff like that? You know, I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, I think if you watch
but
them both play,
I feel like Lamar Jackson is almost having what's happening to Giannis happen to him. The expectations were so high, and the growth hasn't come yet. But you got to look at it and see, you know, he's so young. He has room for growth, and I feel like it's problematic the way we've been judging him this season.
You know what I think it is to compare to basketball? I think the Cardinals' offense is more Golden State. It's new, it's fresh, it's spread. It's spread offense, right? It's air raid offense.
Cliff Kingsbury.
When you look at the Ravens, it's more Spurs-esque. A boring style of play, constantly running the ball. People rather like to watch spread and air raid. They'd rather watch that.
And it's the new shining thing on the scene. Kyler Murray, you know, he's been getting better, and he's having a season this year. A lot of people talked about him as an MVP candidate. I get it, but at the same time, I feel like we got to cut the Ravens some slack here because even in a year that, and it keeps reminding me of Giannis because when we talk about the Bucks, everybody was on Giannis's case about what happened this year. They were one of the best teams in the league. So as much as people say, yes, but as much as people say he's so easy to stop, he can't shoot the ball, then how come he averaged almost a triple-double in the playoffs, was averaging 25 points a game? If he was that easy to stop, teams would be doing it. Just like Lamar Jackson, if he was that easy to stop, teams would be doing it. They still have one of the best rushing offenses and offenses in general in the league. It just comes down to, can he close out games from behind? And that is what he needs to work on. But at 23 years old, I'm willing to bet under a great coaching staff in Baltimore that has proven that they can win and develop talent, I'm willing to bet and stake a claim to the fact that he will improve as a passer.
I'll take that bet with you.
I think he'll improve, but I also think it's alarming that he takes a lot of hits.
Oh, yeah, and that's been my biggest problem with him since college, and it's been my problem with Josh Allen, too, that he's kind of gotten much better with this season. Josh Allen has, not as much as Lamar has, but when you're a rushing quarterback, you're no longer under the same protection that you are in the pocket as a quarterback. So, you know, you're going to take hits that a normal pocket passer is not going to take. And it adds up. It adds up. And that's been my biggest concern. Is he going to be able to last in the league for a decade taking hits like that? You know, look at what happened to Antonio Brown. One big hit, and he's seemingly never been the same since that Vontaze Burfict hit.
I thought you were going to say like RG3.
Yo, I really thought that's what's going to come out.
That's just the one hit that I think of is like one play can
I just
really
thought you was going to throw a quarterback
career.
at us. You threw a receiver.
You know, you could say RG3, but you look at a guy like Antonio Brown that was playing at, and he was the best receiver in football. He took that hit, and from there it was all downhill.
Yeah, but I think...
I thought you would have said maybe Teddy Bridgewater.
I think AB went downhill because of he's just acting crazy. Like, I think Lamar's downfall would be if he were to get hurt rather than go crazy.
I personally, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say this with any reasonable evidence to back it up, but I think that the injury and the head trauma that he faced from that Vontaze Burfict hit led to some of his actions following it.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it just goes to show you that one play.
Started acting real weird after that.
Because before that, you remember, he was highly regarded as one of the hardest workers in the league, one of the best teammates, and then it was like a flip switch.
Yeah, you started
right after that happened.
Yeah.
So I'm not a doctor.
I think there were still stories about him though.
Not like
before.
Not like OD
nothing
though.
Like what you
he
heard.
started acting real crazy.
Maybe it was just coincidental, but
remember when he got caught with that white lady in front of his house?
Yeah,
he was on some weird shit.
So I that is, again, my biggest concern. I would bet on him improving as a passer if he can survive in the league for a decade.
We're going to talk about another AFC South team. We talked about the Colts and Titans earlier, but the team that won the division last year was the Texans. They were the team to beat in the AFC South. I think a lot of people could agree that they have the best quarterback. The Texans doing Deshaun Watson in the division.
Yeah.
But they're a mess right now. And I think a lot of people would say that the Texans are ruining Deshaun Watson. What are your takes on that and the Texans' future as a whole?
The only good thing they've done, they've done two, undisputably positive things since Deshaun Watson has got there. One is extending Deshaun Watson, and two is firing Bill O'Brien. Yeah. It's the only two things that have happened that have been, definite positives in that organization.
Laramie Tunsil was one?
No, because as good as Laramie Tunsil's been for them, you look at that deal, they gave up their 2020 first-round pick, which the Dolphins turned into a later first-round pick, and I believe a fourth. And then they gave up their 2021 first-round pick, which is looking like it's going to be a top-5 pick. 2021 second-round pick, which will essentially be a late first-round pick. And on top of that, they had to pay him a 3-year, $66 million extension, which is good for a team who's in a position to do that. And I talked to you about the Jets with this. When you're a good team and you're in a position to do things like that, that's awesome. But when you're a team like the Texans that have so many holes, it's very tough to pay a guy $33 million.
That's true, but it is one of the most important positions in football.
Yeah.
So if there's one position I don't mind doing it for, is that position.
That's extended Deshaun Watson's lifespan with the Texans, because before that he was running for his life, and he still somewhat is.
He still is, yeah.
But that's kind of helped him out a little bit with that offensive line. But the price that they had to pay for it was so high that you could argue that it was almost a negative for them in the long run.
Oh, he said everything. He just forgot that they traded away the best receiver in the league.
On top of that, they traded away DeAndre Hopkins for a David Johnson, who hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game yet, and a second-round pick. And then they traded a second-round pick for Brandon Cooks to replace DeAndre Hopkins. So I don't know
who has durability issues.
And then they almost traded away Will Fuller, which Deshaun Watson said would have put him in football hell.
He's already.
So if you're Will Fuller, who is not a difference-making player, in my opinion, if you're Will Fuller away from football hell, it speaks volumes about your situation. And that's what the Texans are right now. They're not the worst team in the league, but they are football hell, and I don't know where they're going from here, especially because they don't have their picks.
Do they at least have cap?
I'm going to be honest. No, they don't have cap. I'm going to be honest. One, I do think Will Fuller is a difference maker. Defenses have to key in on his speed because he can break the top off the defense. So I think he is a difference maker. When you look at his numbers when he was on the field, the offense's numbers when it was D-Hop and Will Fuller versus only D-Hop alone, there was a major difference. Like, I think he is a difference maker.
Okay, I get you.
I know he's not a top 10 receiver.
I meant that as he's not a DeAndre Hopkins type receiver.
Yeah, he's not a top 10 receiver, but he's an important player on the field.
That's fair.
But I'll say this, I'm not as down on the Texans' future as a lot of people are. I think a lot of people, one, I thought Bill O'Brien, his time was definitely up, but I think he did a good job in Houston overall. He took them to the playoffs multiple times. They won a division multiple times. He did an okay job there. I think his downfall was his stubbornness and trading away the best players. That's what I think his downfall was. But in terms of winning the division, he did a good job, right? But what I'll say is this. The Texans aren't in that bad of a position. They don't have their picks this year, the first or second round pick. But next year, they have all their picks. And then the years after that, they have all their picks. So this is the only year that it's going to be rough for them. This year and next year will be rough for them. But after that, everything gets easier. They still are not going to have a lot of cap because they paid Deshaun Watson $100+ million. But you have to pay your quarterback that. They've already figured out the most important position. Now it's just about getting the right head coach. And people talk about Eric Bieniemy going to the Jets or going to the Chargers. But why wouldn't you go to the Texans?
I would go to the Chargers 1,000 times out of 1,000 over the Texans.
But here's the point.
Go coach Deshaun. Deshaun's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I'd even say he's an elite quarterback. Any coach would love to coach Deshaun Watson. They just have to figure out the coach and the GM. Because the GM right now, the intern GM, is this guy named Jack Easterby. And he's this kind of mystery man. Like, I was trying to do research on him, and there's nothing about him online that I can find. Like, he's a mystery man. I don't think he's had any experience being a GM. in his career and even football experience in general. I think this is his first stint in like a major role. So I hope the Texans don't bring him back as GM. And so if they can figure out the GM and then the coach, I think they'll be in great position. And they just have to draft well.
But the problem with that is like Deshaun Watson is not getting any younger. And I feel like they've wasted some of his better years on nothing.
I think
they made the playoffs.
This first year, definitely a wasted year. Next year will probably be a wasted year as well, right?
And then even after that, they're still not going to be in a great cap situation. And their picks 2 years from now are going to take time to develop unless I don't see them drafting 7 guys who are going to come in and make an impact immediately. It's just going to be a very tough situation to rebuild. Is it possible? Yes.
Deshaun is 25 years old. You're telling me the Texans, by the time he's 27, 28, they figure it out? That's still young. And that's especially at the age people are playing quarterback now.
It is, but it's going to take a lot of legwork to make them into a contender over those next 2 years. And also, Deshaun Watson is a guy like Lamar Jackson, like Josh Allen. He takes a lot of hits. Is he going to be able to survive through years? Yeah. Where are they going to build it? Because they don't have the cap to add guys through free agency, like elite guys who will make a difference.
They have no picks.
And they don't have any picks. So I just don't like what positive pieces do they really have except Lamar or Deshaun Watson and Laramie Tunsil?
That's why I think for them it's about drafting well at this point. Because in 2021, in this upcoming draft, their highest pick is a 3rd rounder, but they do have 2 4th rounders, one from the DeAndre Hopkins trade. So and then 2022 they have all the draft picks, but they have two 4th rounders as well. So they just have to draft well from now on, which who knows if that's going to happen. But that's why I feel like the first step is getting a good coach in there and getting a good GM. Because a good coach, we've seen that can do miracles for a team. We've seen that with Brian Flores and the Dolphins. These players that all of a sudden look horrible for the Texans, you get a new coach in there, these guys can look way different under a new scheme that they're under in. So that I'm not down on the Texans because they have the most important position figured out. If it was a team that like the Jaguars, they don't have that the position figured out. The Giants, they don't have that position figured out. No, the Texans have a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Now they just have to figure out everything else, and I think that's the easiest part. The hardest part to me is finding the right quarterback.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. The hardest part is definitely finding a quarterback, but you've seen on multiple occasions that a quarterback can – there are very few quarterbacks that can single-handedly win you football games, and I just don't see enough positive pieces. Bill O'Brien, I feel like he did a terrible job with this franchise because if he was just coaching, I wouldn't have that bad of a view on his time there. But they doubled down, made him the GM as well, and he just tore the team apart, traded their best player in DeAndre Hopkins for breadcrumbs. And I just don't – it's such a shame that Deshaun Watson's best years of his career, or not his best years of his career, his youngest years of his career, his years on his rookie contract are going to be wasted away because they should have.
He got injured 1 year.
Yeah. I personally feel like they should have dominated this division, which they really haven't because the division has not been that good since Andrew Luck retired. Even Andrew Luck's last year.
The Titans have been solid for years. They've finished like 4 years in a row, 9-7.
I personally feel like the Texans should have been one of the best teams in the league the past few years, but they have just done such a bad job. When you have a quarterback as elite as Deshaun Watson was his first few years, like the Bills have done a very nice job of taking a great young talent in Josh Allen and surrounding him while he's on his rookie deal, and the Texans didn't really do that. They had DeAndre Hopkins, and they had a couple of nice pieces defensively, but they always had holes. And when you're paying your quarterback who's playing at an elite level, pennies on the dollar, there should not be as many holes as they've had the past few years.
Every team has holes, though. The Texans' only hole, I think, last year was probably secondary and offensive line.
And those are two huge holes.
Yeah, but you look at the
Bills. That's two of the most important positions
you look at the Bills.
on the field.
The Bills haven't been able to do that for Allen. They don't have a pass rush. They don't have a pass rush at all. They don't have a tight end. Like, their tight end isn't that good. Like, there are holes on that team too.
But they have weapons other than
DeAndre
Hopkins.
Will Fuller. Who was there last year? Kenny Stills.
Yeah,
Those
and they
are
have the weapons, but you mentioned that the secondary and offensive line have been so weak, and that's two of the biggest impact positions on the field.
Yeah, but at least they try to do something with the Laramie Tunsil trade. But I'm just saying that you can't fill up every single hole. Like, there's going to be some holes.
Definitely not. I just think that there was too many holes considering what they were paying the second best player on the team in Deshaun Watson. He was playing at such a high level that you need to take advantage of that. And it's one of the things I've said about Sam Darnold, why I think the Jets will move on from him, because they're going to have to pay him in 2 years. And I don't see them righting the ship completely in 2 years. And when you have to pay your quarterback, it's a huge amount of money that takes a large chunk out of your salary cap and just makes your job that much harder moving forward. And when you don't really have the head start, like, I don't think the Texans have enough good pieces to build on right now, especially they traded their picks. They don't have the salary cap. So they can turn it around in 2 or 3 years, but it'll take a very, very good job of rebuilding. It'll be interesting to see. And it all starts with the GM decision and then the coaching decision. That's the two most important decisions in sports. And you mentioned it. We've seen it a million times. Brian Flores has done it in Miami. You bring in a good coach, you create a culture, and that's personally what I think the Texans have been lacking most is I don't trust Bill O'Brien at all. And I think that cost them for the past few years.
That does it for our NFL portion of the episode. Now we're going to move on to the NBA. The first topic we're going to talk about is Kevin Durant. We all know he's coming back from an Achilles injury. He's set to be healthy this year. He's going to play. And there's been people saying that he looks better than ever before. Isaiah Thomas tweeted it, I believe. John Wall said it. Gilbert Arenas said it. They've all said Kevin Durant looks legit and he looks better than he was before. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that Kevin Durant, are you banking on Kevin Durant being better now than he was before?
Sorry, I was just looking at the NFL cap for next year. I didn't know the Jaguars had $83 million in cap. That's freaking crazy.
And I still don't trust them to turn it around. But I'm not banking on Kevin Durant becoming even the same player he was. That is, if he does, it will be a miracle. Because you look at 20 players in NBA history who have torn their Achilles, almost none of them have come back even the same level. You know, Dominique Wilkins is really the one exception who came back better. And the positive for him, although he was a much more explosive dependent player, like he was the human highlight reel. And so that's something that is opposing Kevin Durant, who is more of a surgical type scorer. He'll pick you apart a million different ways. He can score from anywhere on the court. So I think that's one thing that's in Kevin Durant's favor is I think I said it on the podcast a couple weeks ago. You could handcuff his ankles together and glue him to the right wing, and he'll still give you 20 points a night because he can score the basketball flat out. The problem is Dominique Wilkins was 21 when he tore his Achilles, and Kevin Durant is 32. And you look at the list of guys who have done it, almost anybody who's in their 30s, with the exception of maybe Rudy Gay, who came back and shot the ball on slightly better efficiency, averaging almost 2 points less a game at a later stage in his career. Nobody else was the same. And you could go down the laundry list, but I find that if anybody was going to be the exception, I would say Kevin Durant could be, because the way he plays, he doesn't rely on his explosion, any quick first step. He's just a great scorer. He knows how to find his spots, get to them, and it seems like no matter how you defend him, he could make the shot. I just don't know at this age. Sometimes your body is going to say no.
I'm not a big fan of believing in workouts and open gyms because I feel like when you're an NBA player, you're going to look great in almost any workout. Not to mention he's 7 feet, so he's probably the tallest player in the gym. I do agree with you, though, Jack. his game was never really reliant on his athleticism. It was more reliant on his skill and his repertoire of moves. And I feel like he's not going to come back as good, but I think he can still come back at that elite top 5 player level, just off the simple fact that he was one of the most skilled scorers we've ever seen in the game. So he's going to still have that jump shot. The jump shot is never going to leave. He's still going to have that handle. He's still going to have that post game. He's not going to really need to have that burst because he still has the height. He still has the wingspan. So I don't think he needs to come. He's going to come back better, but I think he'll still be back at that elite level.
4 to 5 years have passed since we've seen Kevin Durant in OKC. Arguably the best time in his career, production-wise, statistically, it was OKC. In Golden State, he won. In Golden State, he won.
He's more
but in
efficient
OKC, that was where he was scoring 30. That's where he was winning scoring titles. Most people right now have the image of Kevin Durant, that the Golden State image, the past 3 years, averaging 25 points per game on average. That's the image they have of him. In Brooklyn, is he going to average 25 or more? Okay. He's going to average more. So if we're comparing him to the Golden State KD, and if his stats are going to look better than when he was in Golden State, yes, he'll be better. Is he going to be MVP Kevin Durant, scoring 31, 32 a game in OKC? He won't be that.
Oh, wait. I don't think
he could return to an MVP level.
Now, hold on.
But I do think that, personally, I think he was better in Golden State. I just think his numbers didn't look as good because he was sharing the ball with Steph and Klay, which in turn helped him with those great efficiency numbers. But I think as just a pure
he was a much
skill,
better
I think
player
he was
in
better
Golden State.
He was a much better player because he finally got the opportunity to play defense consistently and not have to carry the load on offense.
He was also a better playmaker
on the Nets. He's gonna have to carry the load with Kyrie.
No, he's not.
I think so.
I disagree.
I think so. Dinwiddie, they don't have Klay. They don't have Steph.
They have Dinwiddie.
Those are superstars.
They have LeVert.
No, but yeah.
They have scorers there.
And you look back at, and I'll speak about the supporting cast too, but you look back at Cleveland, there would literally be games where LeBron would give Kyrie the first 3 quarters and then take over in the fourth. Kyrie can carry the weight offensively.
Look, I think an argument can be made, of course, Kevin Durant was a better player in Golden State. Those were his prime years. But his best production, what he's most known for, is OKC, going to the finals, facing LeBron, averaging 32 a game. That's his most entertaining self, that everybody fell in love with him at that point.
That's fair.
He was his best production-wise in OKC. But yes, he transformed into a better player in Golden State because he played in a different system. But in Brooklyn, is he going to average better numbers in Brooklyn than in Golden State? Yes, I believe so. But is he going to be OKC MVP KD? He's not going to be that.
I get why you're saying that he's going to have to score more in Brooklyn. I disagree, though, because if we go based off them OKC teams, Kyrie offensively is a much better player than Russell Westbrook. And those OKC teams didn't have offensive weapons. I would say
he's a much more well-rounded offensive player.
Westbrook was averaging 24, 25 a game.
He was averaging his efficiency wasn't that good.
I get it.
Kyrie can do it. And this Nets team has scorers. OKC teams didn't have scorers like this Nets team.
James Harden. He has averages 17 a year.
You said MVP, KD. That wasn't James Harden.
2013.
That wasn't James Harden.
Was the year after James Harden, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, either way, that year they had
Deion Waiters coming off the bench.
Yeah, and when I just think that this Nets team, my biggest concern with the Nets is defense, because offensively there should be no concerns. Joe Harris can shoot the lights out of the ball. Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie, Kyrie. It's almost redundant having those 3 guys because all 3 of them you could give the ball to, let them isolate, and they will get you buckets. So I definitely don't think he'll return to an MVP level because I don't think
I agree with you.
I don't think no matter what the situation, unless he was going to like the Hornets or the Knicks and getting the ball every possession and having a sky high usage rate, I don't think he could ever return to that level coming off a torn Achilles. Unless he pulls some wizardry.
The thing about me is that a lot of people talk about, KD his game doesn't rely on athleticism. And while that's true, and they're like, that's why he has a better shot at not getting re-injured again. When he got injured the first time, he wasn't going up for a dunk. He wasn't doing something super athletic. It was a regular triple threat jab step, try to go to the basket. It was a freak accident.
It was
he got
a freak
injured.
injury, but
so at the end of the day, anybody can get injured anyway.
Yeah, I don't like people who say that.
So he's still gonna have to adjust to the NBA game, the NBA speed again. It's gonna be a whole adjustment process.
I will say though, there is a much better chance of injuring your Achilles on more explosive athletic moves. Like scientifically, that's just
I get
likely.
it. I get it, but that's why I'm not buying that Kevin Durant is going to return better than he once was. I'm not buying.
I just think the amount of rest he got from now than when he re-injured himself. He got a whole year rest to fully get his body prepared. So I think he'll be ready to go. I don't think he's going to be MVP Durant.
That was also incredibly irresponsible of the Warriors to send him back out there when it was clear, he was not ready to play.
He wanted to play, though.
Sometimes you have to make decisions. Any player.
He said it, though, that he would have made it again because he wanted to win a championship.
I think any player would do that in that moment.
Exactly. I think sometimes you need to be willing to put your foot down. And I think that kind of.
I understand you, but
I'm saying,
the finals.
I think any player would play in that situation.
Yeah, Klay Thompson played, and he tore his ACL because he was playing hurt.
Yeah, which is also crazy.
He took a risk,
if it was
too.
the first round, I'd have sat down. It's over, but.
It's the finals.
Yeah.
And you could see how much of a difference he made for that team because when he came back for that quarter, I believe it was a quarter and a half before he re-injured the Achilles, they looked like it
was 5 for 5.
They were demoralizing the Raptors. And then, of course, he goes out and granted Klay Thompson then gets injured. It was a totally different series without KD. But I don't even think that he will go back to putting up the same numbers that he put up. He might put up those Golden State numbers like the 25 points a game. I don't think he'll be scoring 30. Just because I think that, especially in the regular season, the Nets will rely more on the other guys, the cast of rotational pieces, even more so because I think that him and Kyrie will take a lot of rest during the regular season, get their bodies right, because we know those two guys have been injury prone their whole career. KD, even before the Achilles, dealt with a lot of smaller injuries. So I think that those two guys will kind of cruise through the regular season. The Nets are a playoff team, even without those two guys, I would think. They would be close. It would be close. Yeah. It would be borderline. But when you supplement, 50 games out of KD and Kyrie, they'll be a playoff team, no question about it. They'll probably be a top 4 seed. And KD and Kyrie don't need to go pedal to the metal to get them there. So I don't think that you'll see Kevin Durant return to that form. But I do think he'll have it in him, and I think you'll see bursts where he does look like his old MVP self. I just don't think that he'll ever be able to put together a season like that again.
I think it also depends on the development of your other players, too, because if those other players make no developments and KD feels like he has to do that in the season, you guys are struggling, then it's going to look pretty bad.
I don't envision that happening, though. You saw Karis LeVert in the bubble, and I know you're not a huge fan of Karis LeVert, but he was carrying a pretty bad Nets team. Spencer Dinwiddie showed on multiple occasions.
I'm going to be honest, any good player can do that.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm just saying I don't think that it's going to come down to...
And he's also another guy who barely plays in seasons.
Yeah, you're right. He's had injury issues. But beyond that, they have Dinwiddie. They have pieces that can handle the load. They have one of the nicer supporting casts in the league, in my opinion. I don't think it'll come down to the point where Kyrie or Kevin Durant need to play at an MVP level for them to be where they want to be at. And I think that was one of the most enticing things for them when they were deciding where to go was, this is a nice supporting cast, so we don't have to be, LeBron and Anthony Davis carrying the weight.
We talked about Houston earlier, the Texans. Now we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets. It seems like everything collapsed overnight. Reports were coming out left and right. Russell Westbrook demanded to get traded. And then Eric Gordon, reports came out that he's been unhappy with his role since 2016. I believe the year he won Sixth Man of the Year. He's been unhappy ever since.
Really?
Daniel House has been unhappy with his touches, and he wants more of an offensive load. And he even verbally challenged James Harden and Russell Westbrook. And Harden is still committed to Houston despite all of this. PJ Tucker is upset about his contract. He wants to be getting paid more.
Austin Rivers made some comments too.
Austin Rivers. There's a report that came out that Harden got mad at Rivers because Harden missed a free throw and Rivers was standing. So there's been dysfunction on this Houston team. And Trevor Ariza In 2018, there was a Trevor Ariza situation in 2018 after they lost in Game 7 that the Rockets wanted to bring him back, but Trevor Ariza wouldn't come back unless he got an apology from the Rockets. Because the culture in Houston is that a lot of the players currently and former players feel that they cater too much to their stars. They coddle their stars too much. And a lot of people, current and former, were wondering why they traded Chris Paul and why they traded Clint Capella. There's a lot of dysfunction going on in Houston. People are almost banking on Westbrook getting traded. Who knows what's going to happen with Harden? But at this point, it seems like a mess.
I don't know if you want to start here, but the first thing I would say is I think that their first and biggest mistake that kind of led to this ball of yarn unraveling was trading Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. And it's just because I think it was an unnecessary move that was just for making a move's sake. I think that Chris Paul was a better fit, and you gave up how many picks to get Russell Westbrook? I believe it was multiple first-round picks to get Russell Westbrook.
I wanted to say you missed on a few things. Westbrook reportedly doesn't want to play with James Harden anymore.
Who said that?
I'm reading it right now.
Did you know that he commented on that post that Stephen A. Smith posted a clip that said that he doesn't want to play with Harden, and Westbrook said that's not true.
I didn't see him comment.
He said that's not true.
And
there's a lot of reports out there. I know Victor Oladipo is another one.
He just came out and said that's not true.
Yeah,
either.
exactly.
But who? It's
so tough to believe what you hear, because then also, I don't want to get too far off track, but that Victor Oladipo situation, the writer who tweeted out the original tweet then responded when Tom Crean, who was Victor Oladipo's coach at Indiana, and he said that I talked to Victor on the phone and he was upset at me for even asking if it was true. The writer who came out with the report responded to Tom Crean and said, I reached out to the Pacers PR department. I reached out to Victor Oladipo's PR guy and gave him an opportunity to comment back or refute the claims, and I didn't hear anything. So it's hard to, it's hard to take sides. What do you want to believe in these situations?
Yeah, I guess, but I don't think the Westbrook not wanting to play with Harden is true. I think him wanting to leave Houston is true.
I agree with you there. I agree. And I think that it started with Daryl Morey getting out of there, and it just kind of left a sense of uneasiness, and I don't know where they go from here. It almost looks like because here's the deal.
I have a question. Hold on. Why did James Harden get mad at Austin Rivers?
He distracted him.
He distracted him from missing a free throw?
Yeah.
Wow.
That almost sounds like like one of those tweets that you would read.
Look,
on
I have
burner
two
accounts.
things to say.
That's crazy.
One thing is about James Harden, and the second one is about Tillman Fertitta. I'll start with Tillman Fertitta. Tillman Fertitta's plan this whole time was to rebuild the Houston Rockets. After they lost in 2017, or was it 2018, I believe?
I think both
in
years.
Game 7, 2018.
Yeah.
After they lost, he believed they should have won in Game 7. He believed that.
Which they
didn't
arguably
win.
should have.
Then I think the nail in the coffin was when they
Kevin
lost
Durant
in
went down.
Game 6. KD went down. The whole world was expecting Houston to finally get over the hump and beat Golden State, and they lost again, and they disappointed again. That's when Tillman Fertitta wanted change, and I don't blame him for wanting to rebuild or retool this team, because you brought in a new GM. You brought in a new coach. You want to play differently. You don't want to, that this team, you don't have the money to surround this team with more pieces, and I don't even think they're one piece away. I think they're one superstar away, which they can't get, but they're 2 to 3 role players away or starting caliber players away from winning a championship. They're not a Nerlens Noel away from winning a chip.
Yeah.
They need like 2 to 3 guys that are solid. So he sees that and knows that they're not going to win like that. And that's what I feel like. But then going to James Harden, look, I've been defending James Harden. Everybody knows I'm a huge James Harden fan, but he has to take the blame. He's not a leader. James Harden is a great elite player, but he's not a leader. He can't be the best. He can't be the best leader on a team. It worked with Chris Paul because Chris Paul was the leader.
Yeah.
But then you see these instances with James Harden that are questionable. The viral video of him on the bench with Chris Paul and smacking his hand when Chris Paul was trying to coach him up and tell him what to do, and James Harden gets frustrated. There were reports that Russell Westbrook in a team meeting challenged James Harden to, like, either, I don't know, play defense or whatever he challenged him to do. I don't know what it was. James Harden got frustrated. He got annoyed. There are reports like this. The CP3 situation. I would think that a guy that you won the most games with, like in franchise history, you'd be cool with. Harden doesn't even like call Chris Paul to tell him how's your children doing, or happy birthday to your son. They're not friends. They're just
coworkers.
Dwight situation. James Harden wanted to run pick and roll. Dwight wanted more post ups. Another situation that went sideways. Like they just couldn't coexist. And people
Dwight's
forget.
Kind of reinvented himself now. All of those guys seem to be doing better off now away from Houston.
People forget. Kevin McHale was the coach for the Rockets. He had success. They made a Western Conference Finals. And he went on and he called James Harden. He's not a leader. He's a passive guy. And when you watch James Harden, he's a passive guy. He doesn't go for the big shots late in games. He's not super aggressive when the going gets tough and the pressure's on. Kevin McHale has said that. And what did James Harden say? He's a clown. He responded by saying he's a clown. It seems obvious there's a pattern here that James Harden can't take criticism and he can't be the best player and the best leader on the team. That's why I think Philly, it looks good on paper. It's going to be horrible. Embiid and James Harden's personality, that won't work. In Brooklyn, I feel like that's a disaster waiting to happen. The best spot for James Harden is in Miami because they have a culture there that's a excuse my language, it's a no bullshit culture.
Jimmy Butler, who's a leader.
And he is going to be the leader. James Harden can win a championship only if he's not the leader of a team. He can't win if he has to be the leader of a team.
And it's funny that you say that. I actually saw a video yesterday, I think, and I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was from I believe it was a 2018 All-Star game, and it was the All-Star game practice, and Steph Curry was talking to Mike Budenholzer at midcourt during shoot-around. Steph Curry didn't know Budenholzer was mic'd up, and he was saying something along the lines of, I saw James Harden in the locker room, and I congratulated him on what he's been doing. It's insane, the numbers he's been putting up. And he was like, he told me that he didn't want to be doing it. It was because he had to. He would rather play in a beautiful system. Like the Spurs.
That's the same thing Kevin Durant said before he went to Golden State.
So I think that speaks volumes to your point. If he doesn't want to do what he does in Houston, it's more out of necessity and almost stubbornness because he's put on that leader pedestal. So he feels like he has to play that role. And I just think that the Rockets organization right now is a mess. I think that last year, honestly, if they ran it back with Chris Paul, I still don't think they beat LeBron and Anthony Davis.
No.
I think it gives them a better chance. I think that they would have been a more well-rounded team, especially if they then keep Clint Capella. Maybe it's a competitive series. Who knows? But if they were going to... That move for Russell Westbrook was the worst thing they could have done because now it sets them up in a position where Russell Westbrook has requested a trade. If I'm not mistaken, he formally requested a trade at this point. So where does he go? Who takes him on? And I've been thinking about this for 2 days because there's two different situations. I feel like there's a middle line in the league. There's the good teams and the bad teams. If you're a good team, Russell Westbrook does not benefit you. He's a low-efficiency guy who needs a high usage rate to be his best. And no good team wants him to have the highest usage rate on the team. For the bad teams, he's a perfect fit. He goes in, he gets all the shots, he gets his high usage rate, he wins you some games,
gets you to the playoffs.
Maybe sneaks you in the playoffs, raises the ticket sales. But is that a guy that you want to give up multiple picks and good assets for? It sets you. I was talking to a Knicks fan friend of mine about this, and I said, is this a guy that you want to give up one of your younger assets and multiple first-round picks for when you have the 2021 draft coming up that has Jalen Green, who a lot of people regard as one of the best products since LeBron? Is that something that you want? Do you want him to turn you into an 8th seed so you miss out on that high draft pick? I get a lot of people are against the tanking, but that's the way to go in the NBA if you're a bad team, a bad franchise, and you've had a few bad years.
There is no tanking in the NBA anymore.
This reminds me of the Clippers. It reminds me just like the Clippers. The players complaining Paul George and Kawhi gets too coddled, too baby because they're the stars. This reminds me just like the Clippers, and they're talking about Kawhi is not a leader. Same thing with James Harden. I do agree with you, though, like everything you said. It makes sense, and the Philly thing might blow up because James Harden is a talented player, but he can't be a leader. I think Miami would be a really good spot because Jimmy Butler would challenge him on every night, and he'll be that leader for that team because even in Miami, Jimmy Butler always wasn't the best player every time they play. You know, there's games where Jimmy Butler finished with like 4 points, but he was always that leader, that vocal leader that was always there in everybody's ear. Even Udonis Haslem, who was still, you know, he didn't play, but he was still that vocal leader on that team. So I think that would help James Harden a lot. And I like Miami as a good spot too.
Do you think that he's up for the challenge though?
He has to be.
One of his that was one of the teams on his wish list.
Yeah, was it Miami? And
it was Miami, Philly, and Brooklyn. So he's definitely up for the challenge.
He has to be. It's no Izzy.
I mean, he has to know what he's signing up for, putting Miami on his wish list.
Come on.
Look at Jimmy's resume. He literally went to Minnesota, took 4
you know
practice
exactly
squad
what you're
players,
walking into,
and took on the starters in a scrimmage. So
now, how does that happen? How do they make that work though? That trade.
And that's another thing. Like, what is that something that? And it goes along with what
I'd rather,
about Westbrook.
if I'm being honest, I'd rather get Harden than Giannis.
No, I agree. I think Harden in the end, but
you can get Giannis for a contract.
Yeah. What does Houston ask for in a trade for Miami? Because in a sense, you will have to trade one of your key young guys. But for Giannis, you really don't have to. You can just go get him.
If you were to bring in Giannis, you're probably not re-signing Bam.
I think Tyler Hero has to go if you're getting James Harden.
I would do it.
At least.
I'm saying you can get, but to get
Hero.
Giannis, you don't need to give up Tyler Hero.
I guess. I know that's true, but at the end of the day, I think if there's a trade available, you should do it for Harden. If I agree that don't blow the whole team up to get him, but if it's there, you do it. Like, no doubt about it.
The thing about the Heat is, like, I agree with you. James Harden could be the guy to put them over the top, and that would be a scary trio if you get Jimmy Butler, James Harden, Bam Adebayo. But what they've done since LeBron
Bam
left,
will not be there.
What they've done since LeBron left has been so it's been so emblematic of what their franchise is. Pat Riley does such a great job. They do such a great job scouting, bringing in young talent, developing it, even bringing in a guy like Goran Dragic that people weren't high on, and he's come in and been an all-star level talent since they brought him there.
Goran Dragic's always been good, though.
Yeah,
I think he had a down year.
He was more of
last year.
And we'll talk about underrated players later, but he's been one of the more underrated players in the league the past few years. They do a good job of finding talent where other people...
Like Derrick Jones Jr.?
Yeah. Even Jimmy Butler was a guy who was not highly regarded around the league after his time in Minnesota, and they brought him in, and look what he did this past season.
I mean, when Goran Dragic signed with Miami in 2014. 2014 in Phoenix, he got traded to Miami, I believe. That year in Phoenix, he averaged 16. The year before, 2013, he averaged 20 for Phoenix.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I just think he goes way too under the radar, and I think that's what Miami does.
I think that too.
They find talent.
Did he make the All-Star year one of those years?
He
only made one with Miami.
One season in Miami.
That's what I was talking about with Miami. Was it that first year?
But he's been an all-star level talent almost every year he's been there, with the exception of 1 year I think he was dealing with injuries. But I just think that they do a really good job of finding value, and I think that this goes against all of their principles. But you need to weigh it with the NBA's superstar-driven league, and do you count on Bam being that guy, or do you count on signing Giannis rather than bringing in a guy like James Harden when you have the opportunity to? But going back to the Rockets, I just think that they're in such a bad spot because they lost their picks. They lost a bunch of their picks in the Westbrook deal. And now they have two superstars that are two of the more difficult superstar players in the league to trade because they're both,
Charlotte's been on the radar for Westbrook.
People look at both. That's a very Charlotte move.
Well, they have Nicholas Batum getting paid 24. So at that point,
I don't know where the Hornets are going, but
no, I do agree. They're the two most.
They're
hard.
enigmas.
They're hard. I think Westbrook is the hardest one to trade.
100%.
Harden is
easy.
Way easier.
I think it's easy.
Way easier.
But you just need to find a team who is willing to give up has the assets and is willing to give.
I think
them
it's more
up.
about what the Rockets are going to get back, because I think that's going to be important for their future and the build process. I think it's about what we can get back for James Harden if it's going to be good for us in the long run.
I think that a lot of people are making the mistake of saying do something like the Thunder did. What happened with the Thunder, as great of a job as Sam Presti did, was luck crazy. More than anything.
Yeah.
Because you will never, in a million years, you could redo that scenario with Paul George. He will never return you the value that he did that summer, only because Kawhi Leonard said to the Clippers, I'm only coming if you get another superstar, and specifically Paul George. That's the reason the Clippers gave up their whole franchise.
I think
to get
OKC
him.
was able to do that because of the fact that Kawhi wanted to play with Paul George.
Exactly.
So they was able to milk out so much.
And then at the same time, they caught the Rockets, who were
had
looking to make a deal.
Yeah,
they at the perfect time had the right pieces, and I don't think this is the perfect time for the Rockets, and I don't think they have the perfect pieces to deal. So it will take a very, very good job of rebuilding.
So you guys think?
And I don't know.
You guys think they get traded before the season starts next month?
I think Harden stays in Houston.
I think Westbrook is definitely gone before December 22nd.
Think so?
I personally think he is. I don't see how they return to the court with everything that's happening.
Training camp starts when? December 1st?
What do you think? Because I personally don't see how they could return to the court with everything that's gone on.
Fan.
And just keep going.
I think they can still return, because there are some people that are saying these reports are false. I mean, PG Tucker put up on a story a cap emoji. So, I don't know. They might not think it's super true. It really depends. I mean, I think that Russell Westbrook and James Harden are best friends. I doubt that Russell Westbrook, if he can't get traded, is going to leave his best friend to play out there alone. He's going to play if he can't get traded. I don't believe he's going to sit out. No, he's going to play still. The Atlanta Hawks are a young team. And right now they have a superstar point guard, in my opinion. He started in the All-Star game, and Trae Young. He's on the verge of superstardom. There have been rumors that they are looking to trade for Jrue Holiday, and an asset in that trade package would be the 6th overall pick. And in your opinion, should they do it?
That one's a tricky one, because Jrue Holiday, he's one of the most underrated players in the league. We all know that. He's very good. He can play defense. He can score. He can also be a playmaker on your team. He could be off ball, on ball. So he can do a lot of things. He can even rebound at the guard position. So he can do a lot of things on the floor. The one thing he's not great at is shooting the 3-ball. I think he's all right at it, but it would remind me of like Klay Thompson for Steph in a sense. You get a guy who can't really defend at the 1, and you got a guy at the 2 who can complement him on the defensive end. So, Trae Young, if he's playing a Kyrie one night, you could throw Jrue on him. Or Trae Young, if he's playing, a Steph Curry one night, you could throw Jrue. I think Jrue will complement him defensively. But I don't know if it would take them on to the playoffs, because for Atlanta, it really depends on how much their young players develop. And I think that's been the situation for them for the past 2-3 years. How Trae Young's going to develop, how John Collins is going to develop. Those two have been developing very well. How Cam, DeAndre Hunter, and Kevin Huerter is going to develop. That's really the key. And how Clint Capella, who they just got, how is he going to initiate himself in the offense? So I think it's a good move in the sense, but I don't know how it's going to work for them getting to the playoffs.
I think this makes them instant playoff contenders if they were to get Jrue Holiday. I mean, they were the 28th ranked defense in the league. Jrue Holiday is going to make that better. He's a top 5 perimeter defender in the NBA. Dame has called him the best perimeter defender in the NBA. Clint Capella didn't play a game for them last year. You get a guy that's as good as defensively as Clint Capella, and in terms of incorporating him in the offense, it's not hard. Pick and roll, lob. That's what he did in Houston all the time. Trae Young is capable of doing that. You get Capella, Jrue, and then now all of a sudden you have a starting lineup of Trae Young, Jrue Holiday. You can put DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish at 3, and either one of those guys can defend at a high level. John Collins, Clint Capella. That is a playoff team in the East. And people seem to forget, if you trade for Jrue Holiday, yes, you trade for Holiday, but you can also get a guy in free agency.
I forgot
so
they had cap.
You have cap to get a guy in free agency, and that would be a perfect situation for them. I don't see this 6th overall pick, whoever's drafted at that spot, being better than Holiday out the bat or being better than Holiday down the line. Like, people have said this is a very weak draft. Atlanta's, the people that they have mocked there is like, Tyrese Halliburton or Isaac Okoro. And do I think that those guys are Drew Holiday? No. Are they going to be better than Drew Holiday in the future? I mean, I'd hate to rule out a prospect, but if I were to bank on it, I'd say no. I don't think they would be.
I would ask 2 questions. One, do they think that they can target another difference maker in free agency? Do they think that they have a chance on somebody who could come in and make a difference in free agency? And 2, kind of going hand in hand with that point, do they think they're ready to make this move? And I agree with you. I think Drew Holiday immediately comes in and makes them a playoff contender, but I don't think that he makes them a championship contender, and I wonder if they are not showing their hand too early, if that makes sense.
What player would make them a championship contender, though?
I don't know that at the moment any player would. Anybody that's available would, but I think that maybe if you wait a year, there will be more options. So I'm wondering if this is the time for them to strike. I think they've done a great job building their core, and they have a potential superstar in Trae Young, and you guys mentioned all the role players that they've brought in. I like I said, I agree. Drew Holiday makes them a playoff team. He's the perfect complement to Trae Young in a sense that he can defend at the guard position. And Trae Young, we know, is not a good defender. He's the worst perimeter defender in the league.
What is Drew Holiday's contract looking like?
$26 million.
Yeah,
and they have. I looked it up. Atlanta has $57 million cap. So if they make the trade, they're at $31 million with Drew Holiday's contract.
What's his option like? Because 2021 and 2022, he's getting paid $26 million, but in the
next year is his option year.
It's a player option or team option.
Player.
Okay, because it depends. Because I would say if he was,
I don't know how the COVID thing worked, but I know this year was supposed to be next year, the 2021 is his player option. So that's the year he could say yes or no. Yeah.
Okay, because if that's the case, then I don't know if Atlanta does this because I think for Drew Holiday's lucky because if he was a free agent next year with all those superstar names that are set to be free agents, he would not have a big payday in free agency. Because he's a free agent in 2022, a weaker class, he's going to get a payday. Mm-hmm. If he was a free agent next year, I think this would be a no-brainer for Atlanta because then they'd have the leverage to – you don't have to sign Holiday for a max because all these guys are spending these money on these stars that there's not going to be that big of a market for him. So it's tricky. It really just depends on how much they believe on Trae Young, how much they believe in Trae Young, and if he can become a star – and the players that they feel are available at number 6. In my opinion, I don't think there's a player there at 6 that is like I would bank on. But at the end of the day, I think Atlanta, they have good players that even if they get a Holiday or a Capella, they got guys like John Collins who averaged 20 and 10, a great trade asset. They could possibly put together a package for a superstar.
And that's what I was going to get at.
But
if you... And here's my big question. Do you think you're ready for a piece like Drew Holiday to put you over the top? The Hawks organization knows things that we couldn't possibly know. Maybe Trae Young is going to come out next year and light the universe on fire. John Collins is going to average 25 a game.
29 and 10?
That's a great question.
He's still going to be the worst defender.
Do they think that Drew Holiday is going to come in and make them a championship contender? I don't think it would make them even close. I think
they just want to make the playoffs, though.
And that's cool.
Because that comes with experience, and you get the experience for the young guys.
Personally, I think that they are not far away from being a championship contender. And if they don't trade,
I think they are.
If they don't trade the 6th pick next year, maybe there's a lot of moving pieces. Maybe there's a superstar that becomes available that could put you over the top.
Because I don't know. I mean, you believe that Cam Reddish is going to be a star. So if you have Trae Young star, Drew Holiday star level, and Cam Reddish star, and then role players in Collins and Capella, then that's like a perfect team.
Collins isn't a role player. I think he fits the star mold.
He could. Well, okay, then you have 4 stars.
But their problem is, it always has been, their defense.
Okay, and Holiday and Capella are great defenders.
Yes,
Holiday
but Trae Young and John Collins are terrible defenders.
Okay, but then Cam Reddish is a great defender. So you have 3 players that are great defenders and 2 that are not.
But I think that can work. They still don't have
a bench.
Not even that. They don't have. Do we think that Trae Young can become one of those guys, one of those 7 or 8 guys, because right now they don't have that. Drew Holiday wouldn't bring them that.
Because he can shoot, I think he can be.
That's fair to say.
Can he be? If he can become Steph Curry, it's a different or you know what I'm saying? In that conversation, it's a different story. But we talk about this all the time in NBA discussions. There are 8 guys around there that are on the list of guys that we think can be the best player on a championship team. I think we all agreed on that. And they don't have
where we see Luka now. Can Trae Young take that jump next year?
Can he? That's what I'm saying.
And if that's the case, then yeah, you do this for Drew Holiday. Right
I would
now.
I would agree with you, but I don't think that he does.
I don't think it because he isn't. If you watch Trae Young play, he isn't. He made average 10 assists, but he isn't the playmaker Luka is.
No, hell no.
And Luka does numerous things better. I just think that overall Luka is an all-around better player.
Luka's way better.
Trae Young does and I wish I had the stats for this because I remember we did one like this earlier in the year. Trae Young does a lot of his damage in blowouts in garbage time, essentially in garbage time, like what Dak did last year. He does a lot of his damage in garbage time. So I don't know how they're gonna. It's tough for them because their average age is 24, so they're a young team. They're on the rise team, and the East is getting stronger. So Brooklyn's coming back. We still got 6. Even without Brooklyn, we still had 6 solid teams in the East. So it's going to be tough. I don't know. It really depends on the young guys' growth. And I think Drew Holiday is a good player in a sense, but it's still going to be tough for them because you're right. They do have cap, but we don't have a free agency this year, right?
No, there is a free agency.
Yeah.
When is free agency?
The 20th or the 21st
of November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to see who they get because they do have $50 million cap.
But who's even available that's going?
They can get a Gallinari. Him and Drew Holiday would make them a playoff team. Really?
Oh, just Drew Holiday would make them a playoff team.
Yeah, they're definitely a playoff team.
I don't know.
I think that with Drew Holiday, they're definitely a playoff team. But personally, for me, when you have the core that they've built, I don't think that the playoffs should be what you shoot for. I think that they should be looking 2 to 3 years from now. We should be seeing ourselves as title.
No,
contenders.
I think the playoffs is what you look for.
I don't think
you can't be one of the worst teams in the East and be like, how do we become championship contenders? You got to be like, you got to look at it like, how can we make the playoffs?
Making them okay, but Atlanta's gonna make what 8th, 7th seed and get swept,
and it comes with a cost because they are giving up assets for Drew Holiday, who's probably gonna walk in 2 years because you're not gonna pay. I don't think that the Golden State
Warriors, when they built their dynasty, that team with Monte Ellis and Steph Curry and Darrell Wright, they were like, how do we become a championship contender? I think they were going about how do we get better now. Trade Monte, we keep Steph. Then they drafted Draymond, and he was a perfect fit. Okay, they drafted Klay, then they drafted Draymond. They were perfect fits, and then it became into that Andre. Why did Andre Iguodala join the Warriors? Because the Warriors beat the Nuggets in the playoffs. Right, so that doesn't happen. So Iguodala doesn't go to Golden State. They don't become a dynasty unless Golden State makes the playoffs and beats them.
Your history is wrong. You have it all mixed up. Draymond, they drafted Draymond. They got lucky with Draymond. Draymond started playing because David Lee got hurt. That's what happened. And then we started to see Draymond Green would have never seen the floor if David Lee didn't get hurt. And they traded Monte, but they got lucky because they got lucky with Steph. That's why they paid him the 4 years, $44 million, because he was dealing with ankle injuries. They took a gamble because they didn't know he was going to be that star player. So that was all gamble.
No, obviously, yeah, but you didn't hear me. I'm saying
I heard you.
I get what you're saying.
No, because
I'm
not a historian, right? I'm not trying to be a major in history right now. I'm just telling you that Golden State was looking at it from the perspective of how do we get better now and take a next step, not take 10 steps from now. No, how do we just take 1 step and get better? And eventually they became a dynasty, but it wasn't because from the start they had it all planned that they were going to become that. It just happened to happen. And that's what I'm saying. You got to try to get better now first and then see what happens from there. You can't just try to take a championship leap right away. Unless you're like a Brooklyn who can do that.
But I think Atlanta can do that with next year's.
Atlanta is one of the worst teams in the East right now. They're 28th in defense. They're nowhere close to being a championship team.
Next year's free agency, Giannis, Paul George, they can take that championship leap next year.
That's what I'm getting at. I don't think so. I see what you're saying. You make the playoffs and you make yourself a destination. It's kind of reminiscent of what the Nets did. They didn't tank. They brought in a guy like D'Angelo Russell. They bet on him. They made themselves a playoff destination, and that's why Kevin Durant and Kyrie ended up deciding to go there. And that's how they got that recognition to gain those two guys. But what I'm getting at is kind of what Riv said. Their core already makes them a pretty desirable place, I would think, to go with the pieces they have, and with the offseason coming up next year, the guys who are going to be free agents, I think that they might be better served.
What pieces, though? Because I just see Trey Collins, who's he's a horrible defender, and Capella. But I don't like Kevin Huerter's okay. Cam is a question mark. DeAndre Hunter, and what he's going to be is a question mark. They don't got guys that you know what they are.
No, you don't know what they are, but it's a lot of young talent. And
it's potential.
Those guys wouldn't have to play the role that you think they have to play if a superstar goes there. And two, they can be packaged to add another guy like the Clippers did last year.
My final take on it is that I just don't think their mindset right now, and any Atlanta fan's mindset, is how do we make moves to win a championship? I think they're thinking about how do we make moves to just surround Trey so we can win games. That's what they need to do, just win games. Because Trey had no help last year. That's why they lost and they were getting blown out. I think fans are looking at it from the perspective and the front office, how can we just win? Because they can't even win right now.
It's fair. It's two different ways of looking at it, and I totally see how you're looking at it, and I'm just looking at it maybe they can strive higher based on the situation that they're looking at right now with their cap, their picks, their young talent. But either way, I don't think they'll be in bad shape. It just is two totally different roads, however you want to go. Do you want to make the playoffs, and that's how you become a location that people want to go to? Or do you say, let's bank on the fact that we have these young pieces, these young assets, and say, hey, I don't know, maybe Paul George, you want to come here, be our guy, and we could dish off Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and this guy who we drafted with the 6th overall pick for another star.
But I think Atlanta
have a big three.
I think Atlanta's looking at Trae Young being their guy, not a guy like Paul George. And even Paul George, hell no, I wouldn't want Paul George if I'm Atlanta.
I was just using him as an example.
But if I picked up Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, I don't think I'm looking for a Paul George type guy.
I was just using him as an example of a guy who's a free agent in that class. There's going to be a bunch of star free agents that they could target, but the betting on Trae is risky.
Betting on Steph was risky. I'm not saying he's going to be that,
and it worked
but
out
I'm just saying that's what happens. And Trae averaging 29 and 10, I don't think there is a reason you shouldn't bet on him being your franchise guy if you're a team. But we'll shift to another young team right now. Atlanta's one of them. The other one is Phoenix. Phoenix is looking to add in a veteran point guard and Chris Paul. Who knows how that's going to happen? There's some trade packages like Kelly Oubre and Rubio. But do you guys think that Phoenix should look to add Chris Paul to pair with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton?
I like the move. I think it's a big upgrade from Ricky Rubio. I think it would probably make them a serious playoff contention for that 8th, 7th seed. I think Chris Paul would do what he did in OKC, only unlock a game in Devin Booker that we have yet to see. I think he'll help them young guys out there. And I think it would benefit DeAndre Ayton in a sense, too. So I definitely like the move. I don't know how they're going to do it because Chris Paul is owed $44 million. So I don't know. They're going to have to give
Kelly Oubre's contract for Chris Paul works alone.
How? Oh, because they have cap.
Yeah, it works. But if they want to sign a free agent in free agency, it'd be smart to throw Rubio and Oubre.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, that would make sense. So I like the move. I think it would be a big plus for the young guys to definitely get better.
I think
and Monty Williams coaches there. They used Chris Paul and Monty Williams used to play together. Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense for the Suns.
Who's to coach him?
Yeah, coach. Sorry.
I don't really like it for the Thunder personally. I think that they could get a better package maybe for Chris Paul or keep him around because you see
pick
how
does the Suns have? Sorry to interrupt.
The 10th.
If they could get the 10th pick, maybe that's the 10th pick would more than likely be attached. It's something you have to consider, but I like what Chris Paul did in Oklahoma City, and I would consider keeping him around for another year with that young talent and help them grow because they are doing, the season they had, they've made themselves a desirable location once again, I would think, based on the success they've had and what they are building there. And they're kind of taking the approach of let's flip Chris Paul. Well, he's still got trade value. Get that 10th pick, build up our assets. I love it for Phoenix because we saw Chris Paul is the perfect guy that you want in your building when you're trying to establish a culture. He went to Oklahoma City. People didn't expect anything out of them. They thought that they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league. And not only did he play at a great level all year long, but he elevated the guys around him. He made Shai Gilgeous-Alexander so much better. He would challenge him to shooting competitions after practice. Even guys like Lou Dort, who came and you didn't even know his name at the beginning of the season, and you see the role he had in the playoffs. Any young guy that's playing with Chris Paul is taking a master class on NBA basketball. It's the guy that I would want helping build my young talent, mold them. And you look at the Suns right now, coming off the 8-0 bubble. I personally think they would have been a playoff team if DeAndre Ayton didn't get suspended for the first 20 games of the season. They have a lot of young talent in that building, and Chris Paul would be the perfect guy to mold that group into a playoff team. And I think the Suns are in a different place than the Hawks, who we just talked about. I think the Suns should be striving to make the playoffs because
It's been a long time coming.
They need something right now with Devin Booker. And if you make the playoffs with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, it makes you a location that another star would look at and say, that's somewhere where maybe I go. We create a big three. We could be a championship contender. And I think that making the playoffs would be a huge step for them. And I think Chris Paul could get them there.
The Thunder have to trade Chris Paul. They have to trade him now. Mm-hmm. They can't wait a year. Part of the reason why Chris Paul's trade value is so high is because they made the playoffs. He's 35. Who knows if he's going to get hurt next year? He gets hurt next year, his trade value is over. It's done. Nobody's the Thunder have leverage right now to get a first-round pick for a 35-year-old Chris Paul. And if we're being honest, I don't think Phoenix should trade the 10th pick at all. You don't trade the 10th pick for Chris Paul at all. But what I will say is this, you can trade a future first-round pick for Chris Paul, that's fine. But from the Thunder's perspective, Danilo's a free agent. You have a hole at small forward / power forward at the forward spot.
No, you don't.
How?
If you're banking on Darius Bazley.
Okay, but I'm saying you
I
have.
know what he's about to say. Darius Bazley would not even play a role. But they don't finish. But they don't have. But they don't have a small forward. Like
I'm just saying, if you're banking on his.
Okay, I like Bazley, but I'm just saying they have a hole at this forward spot, regardless if Gallinari leaves or not. They don't even have. Terrence Ferguson was starting at the 3, so they have a hole at 3, right? If you're looking at all these trade packages from the Knicks, right? Who can they give you? Ntilikina, Kevin Knox, and a pick? Who can these teams give you? Phoenix can give you Oubre, who averaged 19 and 6, who becomes your instant small starter at small forward. And you talk about Chris Paul making guys better. Phoenix got better this year because of Rubio. Chris Paul is better than Rubio, we know that, but is it going to be a significant drop-off like going from Chris Paul to DJ Augustine? No, you're going from Chris Paul to Rubio, a guy who averaged 13 and 10. 13 and 9, I say 13 and 10 basically. He's going to make Shai better. He's going to make Oubre better. He's going to make Bazley better and Adams. Rubio is a floor general. I know he didn't pan out because he got drafted ahead of Steph Curry and, whole dilemma there, but he's a great point guard floor general. And they're not going to be tied to them long term. So if the perfect best case scenario for OKC, get Rubio, take over that starting point guard role. You still have Dennis Schroeder off the bench. You have a guy averaging 19 and 6. You don't have to re-sign Gallinari, and your drop-off isn't massive going into next year. Your guys still become better, and you have future picks. Like, I don't think the Thunder should be trying to get a massive haul of picks. You already have that. Just get players that can play.
That and get that big contract out the way for future references.
Are you saying that even if they don't get the 10th overall pick, they should do the deal?
Yeah, look, it's the 2021 draft, right? Or the 2020 draft.
Yeah.
If they give me a 2022 first-round pick, 2021 first-round pick.
No, you get the 2021 first-round pick.
Regardless, if they offer me whichever, I'll take it. Whatever. If I can get a first-round pick for Chris Paul, I'll take it. Along with the guy who's averaging 20 and 6, basically, and 13 and 9. Like, I think that's a no-brainer. Kelly Oubre is the best player the Thunder can get in a trade package from any team. Like, what other teams are looking for Chris Paul and they can give you a better player than Kelly Oubre?
Milwaukee.
Who is that
No,
player?
I was just throwing out a team.
Okay, Milwaukee. Now? Would you classify? Would you rather have Oubre or Bledsoe on your team? Especially if you can get Oubre and Rubio.
Well, Milwaukee would have to give up somebody else essentially because their cap is terrible.
Kelly Oubre's what, 23, 24, 19 and 6. He has a ton of potential.
Yeah.
He's about it. Like he's entering free agency a year from now. So
What's Rubio's contract looking like? He's still
Rubio,
good?
I think he probably has 3 years left or 2 to 3 years left, but he's not getting paid Chris Paul money.
Yeah, no.
He's getting paid 13, 14 million. So I think a trade with the Suns would be the best case scenario. And I think OKC is playing it safe, and the Phoenix Suns are taking the most gamble because they don't even have a bench.
Yeah.
So they take Chris Paul. You can sign a guy, but that's the only guy you're going to sign realistically.
Right here.
And I just wanted to say that when...
Oh, their cap would be gone. They only have 20 mil right now.
The Suns?
Yeah. So they'll probably be gone.
When I said the Thunder should consider looking elsewhere, I didn't consider the Suns giving the 10th overall pick in the trade. I don't think that is that. I personally, I haven't heard much about the discussions. Were they discussing the 10th overall pick in that deal?
I don't think
if
I
they
don't
could
think
get the
they
10th pick, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, no-brainer.
And if you could get multiple future picks, I would say it's a no-brainer.
I don't think
like
it's
you said,
multiple,
Oubre and Rubio.
I think
will also
Rubio
make
and
a
a 10th pick if they're lucky is okay.
I think Rubio, Oubre, and a future first is enough for Chris Paul.
You
don't go over that.
I think that they
don't be greedy.
I almost think that they could get a better deal somewhere else from a more desperate contending team. But maybe the Bucks.
Oubre and Rubio shoot 35% from 3. Rubio shot 36. So he's not the bad shooter that he once was. Yeah. OKC won't have a major drop-off.
So who will be the leader on OKC?
The leader, I
think Shea takes that
I think
step.
the leader floor general would be Rubio. I think you're hoping, Shea takes a step, averages 20 this year. Oubre, he'll dominate the ball, so he'll probably average 20. He averaged 19 and 6
You still have a guy in the
year.
locker room like Steven Adams, who's been a good locker room presence his whole career.
Luguentz Dort, one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. So
it would be fun. They would be
fine.
fun to watch, even without a superstar. They would be fun to watch, and then obviously they have an insane haul of picks over the next decade, and
I like it.
I think they would have a lot of room in cap still, right?
Nah, I think
they have Steven Adams big contract.
I think they'll be okay
Rubio
though down the line.
Oubre, but down the line,
because they're not going to sign a star free agent.
Schroeder's
they're banking on the
15,
draft.
so I think they'll be okay
but,
later.
Down the road, they would be in a good cap situation.
Because Schroeder and Adams ends the same year.
So for you guys watching the show right now, we're about to call one of our Patreoners. Riv's going to call. Okay, we're about to call one of our Patreoners. Because he's actually donated $15 a month to the podcast. So if you guys donate $15 a month to the podcast, you can have a guest spot.
This could be
on
you.
one of the segments. Yes, so this could be you if you donate. We'll probably take that off soon though, because I don't know. I feel like 15 is a lot, but a guest spot is major. Is a major.
You sit at this table.
But when we start live streaming, we just have people call in and just have that $15 option. Yeah, for sure.
Sneak peek. Stay tuned.
So we're waiting on Riv because he's using a bathroom. He's went twice already. It's ridiculous. I feel like it's ridiculous.
Now he's getting mad. He just yelled at us.
Now, but I think the Suns should. I don't know. I don't know if the Suns is Chris Paul would be great, but I don't know. It's a risky move for them mostly. I think OKC's safer in this.
Yeah, and
because Phoenix isn't going to be winning a championship.
Sam Presti's done a ridiculously good job.
I said you used the bathroom twice. It's ridiculous.
I drink a lot of water, bro.
I hope you don't do this when we live stream, bro.
Nah, I'm gonna tone it down when we live stream. Why don't you not stutter when we live stream? How about that?
I'll be fine. You got to worry about not pissing your pants.
Who am I calling?
Calling Jay. The number
you have his contact.
I do. I'm about to call my boy. Be like, yo, Jay.
Hopefully it's the right guy. You don't call the wrong one.
No, it's literally here.
Okay.
Yeah. Call him?
Yeah, call him.
Roadcaster, bro.
Yeah.
Oh.
Call him right now.
Yo.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, Joel?
Right now, you're live on the Pick a Side podcast. We just called you because we want you to do this segment with us. So are you ready to name your most underrated player in the NBA?
Yeah, so first I'd like to thank you guys for having me on, and then I just wanted to say, been believing in River and you guys for about a year now.
Okay. So you're actually a contact on Riv's phone. So how do you know him?
So basically, I used to work at Bergen Community College,
Okay.
and I met up with River at like an event that we were hosting,
Mhm.
and it was basically an instant connection through sports.
Mm. All right, cool. So I know
It's so funny because we were like setting up the phone number, so we were ready to go, and he types in the phone number, and he's like, I have his contact, because he didn't originally, Joel set this up, so we didn't know who was calling in. So when he got the number, it was just funny because he had it in his phone already. So that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I'm usually commenting and liking all the posts, but don't really say much.
Yeah, we appreciate you, man. So, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to get into this most underrated player. So, who's yours?
So I'm going to go with Devin Booker. I know there's a lot of recency bias, and a lot of people have been basically thinking he's really good, but I'd say just a year back, there was a lot of people basically saying that he was a big numbers player that couldn't get any wins.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny because we were just talking about the Suns right now and if they should trade for Chris Paul and how good they'd be if they were to trade for Chris Paul.
so I think they could trade for Chris Paul and basically put in a package from Ricky Rubio,
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Oubre, and maybe a second
Oh wow.
if that would entice the Thunder, so that Devin Booker could get even more experience as a point guard and playmaker. Because with Ricky Rubio, he was already on track. I think he averaged about 6 assists last year, which was his most assist total since he came into the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the bubble, he really did. Again, it's only an 8-game sample size, but he cemented that he can win big-time games. And, they were competing for a playoff spot. It's not like those games had no meaning. If it wasn't for Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers beating the Nets, I know because I was watching it, the Suns would have been a playoff team based on that 8-0 bubble stretch. And I think that kind of opened people's eyes. But I do remember when people were saying, just because he was on a bad team in the Suns, that he was, like you said, all numbers and couldn't win. But I feel like he was a victim of his circumstance there where they didn't do a great job building around him. And now that some of those pieces are growing up a little bit, they brought in Rubio. He's much better off, and he's been able to prove himself a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And here, I'll read some numbers off for you guys. This is a player that we consider one of the best in the league. So after they joined this team, they averaged 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. And ever since then, their point total just went up. Devin Booker's first year, where he averaged 20 points, he averaged 22, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. The player I compared him to was James Harden, and his numbers are on track with James Harden. I think he averages about 3 points less and 3 assists, but he's getting there.
I wouldn't even put it past Devin Booker if Chris Paul were to get traded there for the James Harden comparisons to start coming from Chris Paul if he were to go there and play with Booker.
With DeAndre Ayton, too, that would be a really interesting team, and I think they would definitely be a playoff team. I don't know how much they could compete for a championship because the league is so, top-heavy with the superstars now, but I think they could definitely make life a bit tougher for a bunch of those Western Conference playoff teams near the top.
So, Riv,
Yeah, for sure.
So, Riv, who's your most underrated player?
I'm gonna go with Donovan Mitchell. I feel like I'm not a recency bias. I was pretty high on Donovan Mitchell in Louisville. I liked how he carried his team in Louisville his second year. And I feel like this Utah team, when he first stepped onto the scene, this Utah team wasn't always great offensively. And I feel like he's been, the last 2 years have really showed us that he can carry an offense. Not to a championship team or nothing like that, but he can be the catalyst of a playoff team consistently year in and year out. Offensively, he can carry the load. So I really like Donovan Mitchell as an underrated player.
And who's yours, Jack?
So I went with, and I debated amongst a couple guys. I told you guys I considered Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Dinwiddie, LeVert, a couple of different guys. Drew Holiday, somebody we talked about earlier in the show. But the name I settled on was Nikola Vucevic. He's a 20-11 guy this past season, and he gives you that production pretty much every year, at least close to that. And now in an age where it's so important for centers to be able to shoot, he's shooting almost 4 threes a game at 33%. Not eye-popping, but when you look at it, that's 7th overall amongst all centers in the league. So he's one of those centers that can stretch the floor, plays defense under the rim, can score in the post. And every year it seems like the Magic are sneaking into the playoffs. And it's not like they have this uber talent surrounding him. Who's it been? Evan Fournier, Ross, Augustine, Aaron Gordon.
They had Briscoe starting for a little bit, too.
Yeah, so it's not like they've had this uber talent around him, but somehow he always finds a way to carry them to the playoffs. Even in a weak East, I think it's an accomplishment with the cast that's been around him, and I feel like he doesn't get the respect he deserves because they're always a first-round exit. But the numbers that he's putting up, if he was on a better team, he would be considered in that top 5 centers in the league, and I feel like he doesn't get that respect right now.
My most underrated player, when you said Jaylen Brown, I wanted to agree with that, but I feel like people know about Jaylen Brown.
He got there this year.
This is I'm about to name a guy that people don't know about, and he's often overlooked. I think my most underrated player is a center. It's Jonas Valanciunas. You look at him, he's averaging 15 and 11 a block. He's shooting 35% from 3, 58% from the field. People, when they talk about Memphis, they talk about Jaren, they talk about Ja, Dylan Brooks even, but they never mention Jonas Valanciunas, and he's averaging 14 and 11, playing only 26 minutes a game. Last year, when he got traded to Memphis, he was averaging 20 and 11. Like, this is a guy who's been underrated throughout his tenure in the NBA, and I think he's kind of going under the radar as of now as well.
And he was always an important part on those Toronto teams that, although they would run into the buzzsaw of LeBron, always seemed to be at least one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference.
He's also only 28 too, so even if you don't see him there for the late future, he could definitely serve as a veteran for the upcoming years.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So, first of all, we just want to thank you for pledging to us on Patreon. It means a lot. It means a lot to us that you even went as far to do that.
Yeah.
You are our first Patreon.
To see, and just to add on to Joel's point, as somebody who jumped on the podcast late, I know you two guys have been at it for 40 episodes. I hopped on somewhere in the 20s. To see somebody supporting us more than just their words, to see somebody staking a monetary claim to our content, like Joel said, it means so much, and we can't thank you enough.
Jay, I thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, thank you guys. You guys put out content every single week. A lot of the bigger YouTube shows have gone kind of stale, and it's more about just the personalities that they put on. So having a show on YouTube that I could watch where people actually give the genuine opinion is really great.
Yeah, man, we thank you, and we appreciate you for being on, and it was a pleasure to have you on for this segment.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
And this is going to do it for this episode of the Pick a Side podcast. If you guys enjoy our content, please share it. You can find us on TikTok now at Pick a Side Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Pick a Side Podcast and on Twitter at Pick a Side Pod. I don't know if podcast is taken. If it is, I won't use it. If it's not, I'm going to check if it's not, then I'm going to just make everything Pick a Side Podcast. And then, of course, on YouTube, find us at Pick a Side. You'll find us closing on 1K subs. Once we get 1K,
We're rolling.
A cake is gonna be here. We're gonna start going live.
Oh, we're doing a video with the cake in the.
We got to get the cake.
Yeah,
right
we got to
in the middle.
congratulate
That is
people
dope.
for
That is
doing
dope.
for getting us at 1K
Just
subs.
picture it. By next episode, 2 episodes from now, we could have a 1K subs cake right here. But
Yes,
we need
sir.
you.
That'd be dope.
Help us.
We have our podcast is on Apple Podcasts, and recently I updated it on Spotify because for some reason the RSS feeds weren't updating. But I had to email Spotify. Everything's fixed. So now we should be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
We're everywhere.
We're
You
everywhere.
can't escape
We're on
us.
everything.
So we're all in your guys' faces, and thank you guys for supporting us. And this was a great another episode, closing in on 2 hours. We're at 1 hour and 59 minutes.
We said we thought this was going to be a short one with the
We
8
did.
Yeah,
topics.
literally, we thought it was. So yeah, guys, thank you guys, and see you next time.